We've had a lot of questions as to whether Wipe New is a good application on gel coat. The answer to that question is yes, it's a great application. It can take an old faded gel coat, make it look like brand new, and on the flip side it can take a boat that's in good shape and lower the time that you have to spend maintaining that boat, as in washing it. If you're a fisherman and you have fish blood to deal with, or you just like to party on your boat, when you come back in, a lot of times you're tired, you don't want to spend a lot of time washing it down, and that can be a 2 or 3 hour proposition if you're really diligent about keeping your boat clean. What Wipe New will allow you to do is cut that time by 2/3. The reason it's able to do that is because it addresses the #1 problem with gel coat, and that's porosity. Even though it's a fiberglass boat and it floats on water, it actually absorbs water, and it'll absorb dirt as well. It'll absorb suntan oil, fish blood, anything that comes into contact with it and sits for any length of time that has any kind of coloration to it will actually leave a stain in gel coat, because the pores actually suck that liquid in. And what Wipe New does is actually seal those pores and essentially makes gel coat non-porous. The reason you see a boat like this with bottom paint, you can see the blue bottom paint that runs along the bottom of this boat. If a boat sits in the water long enough, it'll actually absorb enough moisture through the gel coat to actually blister. So that's why bottom paint is applied to these boats. This guy here, obviously, he pulls his boat every time he fishes, so he doesn't want the bottom paint. The bottom paint actually, it adds weight to the boat. It'll actually slow it down in the water. But if you're going to keep your boat in the water for prolonged periods, you've got to have it, because again, gel coat's very porous. And what we're going to do is we're going to take you through some prep procedures. One of the things that's made Wipe New kind of revolutionary to the boating industry is that we're doing away with all the sanding and all the compounding and all the buffing that has to take place to remove that dead material before you do any waxing. We actually use a chemical process to strip off the dead layers of oxidation. We can also remove the rust stains from the transom that you see back here. Instead of having to go through an abrasive sanding procedure to remove this, we actually have an acid that's going to get that out and prep the bottom of the boat. So what we're going to attempt to do is take you through the prep from the top down, and like I said, we're going to try to give you a good basis of information to begin thinking about doing your boat. But I would suggest that if you're inclined to do it, follow the prep procedures, watch this video several times, and get the procedure down in your head before you start. And then when you get to the coating stage, I would recommend doing a very small portion first. That way, if you don't get the result you want, you can correct it. Don't jump on board your boat and just go coating and then get halfway through it and realize, ooh, I did something wrong, because it makes it exceedingly difficult to return to your starting point if you coated half the boat. Our procedure for removing Wipe New once it's dried is wet sanding. First thing we want to cover is some basic tools that you're going to need before you start. A lot of the acids and cleaners that we spoke of to begin with that can be damaging to your skin. You want to protect your eyes. We use Nitrile Gloves for our hands when we're prepping the boat. This is going to protect your skin from these chemicals that we're using. A couple other things you're going to need is a couple of nice soft nylon brushes. You can attach those to wands if you want to, or you can actually literally just hand hold this. And it's going to allow you to get into all the nooks and crannies where the dirt's hiding. We'll show you, a lot of the doorways and the jams that surround the equipment wells and the bait wells. You're going to need to be able to get in there and really scrub. These are softer bristles. They're not super hard. They're kind of an exploded nylon. That way they're not going to do any undue scratching. Again, the chemical is going to do most of the work. So what this does is just agitate the surface and work that stuff out. So you don't need a super aggressive brush with these chemicals. The next thing you're going to need is a way to apply the chemicals. We use a garden sprayer. And this product here is an alkaline-based cleaner that we use for most of the gel coat, all of the grip, the non-skid inside. You can use it on the upholstery, and we use it on the outer hull. And what it does is it actually chemically strips the oxidation out of the gel coat. Again, we're not going to be doing the traditional wash, sand, buff, and seal. This is actually a two-step process, and it also, the beauty of it again is it spares your gel coat. It's not an abrasive process. We're trying to attempt to get this boat completely cleaned without doing any abrasive work on it at all. The garden sprayer will hold about 2 gallons of chemical. It's a more efficient way of getting the chemical on the boat. If you're sitting there with a squirt bottle on something as big as this, you're just going to work yourself to death trying to get product down. And if you're working in the sun, it's going to evaporate before you can get any kind of sizable area prepped. So
what is this chemical?
Okay, this is a chemical made by Zepp Manufacturing. It's called Big Z. If you go online onto Zepp products or Zepp.com, you can find that chemical, but it's formulated for cleaning truck fleets. And the reason it works on boats is the cab forward portion of most trucks is a gel coat finish. It's a fiberglass tilt away front end. Has a gel coat finish, very porous, just like a boat, and this is formulated to bring that ingrained dirt, the diesel soot, and all the other environmental stuff that tractor trailer runs into on the road out of the finish. And a lot of the truck stops just use this as a cleaner. We use it for the boats, again, same reason the construction's the same. Now the other situation that we use a chemical for, if you look at the back transom of this boat, you can see some rust stains. Again, this is part of the porous nature of fiberglass. There are minerals in the water systems, more so in the saltwater systems than freshwater, but you're going to get a certain amount of this mineralization that occurs in the gel coat. What the Corex is actually a hydrochloric acid-based cleaner. Again, this is made by Zepp, and it's called a utility cleaner. Normally we'll spray this with the same type of sprayer, but what it'll do is it'll actually go and it's going to convert all of that rust, lift it out of the finish, and basically just convert it to like a slime that we can just wash right off. Some other things you're going to need in your prep, once everything is scrubbed down to your satisfaction, we have to make sure that the boat is completely dry before we apply the white new, and we do that with a lot of these. We use a leaf blower actually, and we'll start from the top. Anywhere on the boat that you have, anywhere that there's something bolted onto the boat, whether it be a handrail or a tie-down cleat, this rub rail here, they trap water. I mean, behind every bolt, behind every nut, anywhere there's an interface between a pole and a fiberglass surface, water's going to accumulate. You got to drive all of that water out of the boat before you begin coating. That's really probably the most. You have to be patient when you're doing that step. You know, you'll go around the boat sometimes 3 or 4 times, and if you have the luxury of time, you can do it on a hot day. Leave it outside and let the sun do some work for you, but still come back with your leaf blower and dry everything off. The only other things that you need besides that is just your white new kit. We do carry acetone with us. Sometimes people have older stickers on their boats, you know, from depending on where you live. You might have an inspection sticker or just a license sticker. If you want that off, now's the time to do it. You don't want to seal it over with white new. This will remove residues from the glue. All right, for this boat we're doing today, it's a 26-foot regulator. It's a bow rider. It's a pretty wide beamy boat. We're anticipating we're going to use between 20 and 30 ounces of white new. Generally what we found in most of our applications is we use about 1 ounce a foot. Isn't that right, Rick? About 1 ounce a foot per boat. It can vary. If it's a new boat that's in really good shape, you might use less because the material is going to be less thirsty. If it's an older boat, let's say it's a 10 or 12-year-old boat that's really been left out in the elements, it's not as great a shape as this one, you may use a little more because it's going to drink more in. And when you're prepping a boat, you just want to make sure you work in sections. You want to break it down systematically. We're starting at the very top. All the dirt travels down, so you want to work from the top down. What he'll probably do once he gets off that tower is we'll actually work the underside of that tower, and then we'll literally work our way back from the bow. We've tilted this up so the water's going to run out the back through the scuppers. Move fast enough, the dirt will get sucked right back into the surface, so you don't want to try to do a really, really big area and then come back and rinse it, because depending on the porosity of the gel coat, your stain can just be reabsorbed back into the finish. White new works really well for your aluminum and stainless. What Rick's doing right now is actually prepping it prior to coating. And what we're using is a 3M product. It's called Trizac. It's a 3000 grit paper, and all he's doing is basically wet sanding it to get the scale and the salt residue off of it. What we're trying to do, Nick, is just work this inside section so we can get up here. But we're essentially going to work from the front of the boat back. On the non-skid, you want to try to get every stain out you can. You want to get this as perfect as you can possibly get it during your prep, because once you seal it, it's sealed forever. In all your compartments, you want to take the time and scrub out these jams and actually even scrub the underside of the doors. The reason you want to do it is, number one, if you coat that, it's just going to be so easy to keep clean. So go ahead and do it now. And again, you see we're rinsing this quickly. You don't want to give it any time to reabsorb those stains. What we're trying to do is just basically work our way out of this from the bow to the stern. Again, we've got it tilted so that most of the water is going to run out of the scupper holes. And what we're trying to do is push all the dirt back as we go. You don't want to try to come back up here. The next time we come up, it's just a dry, and we might even be in our sock feet. That way you don't bring any dirt back in. If you have to get out of the boat for something, take your shoes off up here. Have another pair of shoes down there that you walk around on the ground in. And then when you get back, you've got a clean pair here, because if you drag dirt back in, you have to clean it again. So just kind of got to think about what you're doing and make it work as easy as possible. If you climbing on and off the boat with dirty feet, you're just going to be re-cleaning all day. One of the things we'd recommend is, once you think you're clean, once you think you're ready to go and have got all your prep work done, walk back over your work again with some fresh eyes, take a look at all the nooks and crannies, make sure it's completely clean, and address it now rather than later, because the boat's more or less wet. But if you let it dry completely out and then you realize, wow, I've got to do some more intensive cleaning, it's going to extend the time that you spend on the job. The other thing is just, again, you got to exercise patience when you're doing this prep. We're out here on a pretty cold day, and it's uncomfortable working conditions, but you can't go too fast, and you can't rush anything. So, if the conditions don't suit you, put your stuff away and wait for a better time. Again, the key is just don't be rushed when you're doing this. Prep is everything, and it's really going to determine how the job comes out.
Sometimes you get these scuffs and rust marks that you have a hard time scrubbing out with a brush, or your chemical just won't take care of. All you got to do is just take your 3000 grit, get it nice and wet, and just meticulously scrub all the areas of concern off.
We're completing a final rinse up there. What Rick's doing is just making sure the last little bits of debris are pushed to the back. And I'm going to start the transom. We've got our acid. We're going to go ahead and pre-soak this. What we're going to do is let it have a chance to break down those orange stains that he's gotten from the seawater. And we'll scrub this as we did the other part. But it may take a few minutes for the acid to do its work on these stains. We'll come back in about 5 minutes and see how that washes off. Just go ahead and give it a good pre-soak. And at this point too, if you've got like a white-hulled boat that has these stains all over it, before you start even scrubbing the upper part of the hull, pre-soak it with this acid. Now's a good time, because you may need 2 or 3 applications. You want to give it 5 or 10 minutes. Big difference. It's a way more efficient way of removing that stain as opposed to sanding. Trying to polish it off, which is virtually impossible. Your hull is white and you've got to get the pink to get the staining out of it. The pink is the acid. When you get to your rinsing step, you want to really make sure that you thoroughly rinse that product off the boat. If you don't, it'll actually react to white new. And the way you know it's reacting is it'll start to smoke. Actually, a chemical reaction takes place between the two, and little tendrils of smoke will start coming up off the surface of the boat. If you see that, stop, come back out, wash your boat down with soap and water, and rinse it again. Okay, as you can see, we can't reiterate enough that speed is of the essence when you're doing this, particularly if it's a chalky boat. See, what I'm doing is I'm actually spraying it down. Rick's coming behind me, scrubbing it into the surface, and then we're going to very quickly rinse. And the reason we're doing that is we want to dislodge all the dead material, all the oxidized gel coat, and get it on the ground before it has a chance to be reabsorbed. I'm actually going to not complete this whole side. Another thing too, if you're working on your trailer, these aluminum trailers, and you're using acid, as you rinse the side of the boat down, rinse the trailer off too, because the acid can discolor the aluminum. I think it'll hurt it, but as far as cosmetics go, it just doesn't look good. All of our preliminary prepping, we still have a little hand sanding to do, a little touch up here and there. But what we wanted to show, if you look down the side of the boat, this is what you want to see before you go and coat with white new. You want to see a little bit of reflectivity in the hull. And the other visual is you want to be able to take your hand and rub down that hull. If you come back with any dead material, that means you still need to do some cleaning. Because again, all that oxidation is going to interfere with the final result of white new if you don't get it all off. But as you can see here, we've got some pretty good reflectivity. We have no dead material, so that tells us this is ready to go. Now what we're going to do now is we're just going to go around and do a little handwork. Rick's knocking some scuffs off the hull. I'm going to go top side and I'm going to look for, the little areas that we need to touch up, because now, after you've washed it, you've got to go back and look for heel marks, any scratches that you want to remove. Now's the time to do it. And then we're going to walk around the boat one more time, make sure we're completely happy with the way it's prepped, and then we'll start coating. We're going back inside for a final prep, and as we spoke of earlier, you don't want to drag all the dirt from the surrounding ground back into the boat. So I actually brought a second pair of shoes that are clean. I'm just giving them a final wipe down, and then we're going to lay a towel down in here so you can actually step on that and keep these shoes in the boat as you start to work inside. If you have to come out, have your dirty shoes on the ground, change into those if you need to walk around. But I can't stress enough the importance of having clean deck shoes at this point. Another thing we want to stress, these are nitrile gloves. Even though we've done all our prep work, there's still some hand work that's got to be done in here. Always work with gloves on, because you don't want to introduce any skin oil to the surface. It's actually, again, right now it's a very porous material, so when you touch here, all the oils that are present on your skin are going to get absorbed into the gel coat, and you don't want to coat over that. You're not going to get great adhesion, and you actually may see some discoloration. So keep these on. It's just a good habit to get into. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this piece of 3000, I'm going to go up to the front. Everything, again, works from the front to the back. I'm going to look for any scuffs, any scratches that I can sand off, or any dirty spots that we might have left behind in the prep. And as I get to the end here, we'll just exit off like we did when we were cleaning it, and then the next step we'll go to coating.
What we have here, we've thoroughly washed the hull, and we have scuffs, scratches, little tiny areas that you can't coat over. So what you want to do is you want to take your 3000 grit, a little bit of soap solution or whatever, and just go ahead and try to sand these areas off. 99% of the time, if they're not gouged, they'll come off. But if you coat over them, you won't be able to get those stains out. So you always want to make sure that you get them all out, and then just take your microfiber towel and wipe it. You're good to go. And that whole area that had those scratches and transfer marks on are now gone. Spray a little bit on there. Might have to put a little elbow grease into it sometimes, because 3000 grit's not the most aggressive sandpaper in the world, but you can coat over 3000 grit scratches.
Along these edges, there's some slight scuffs. If you come in here, you can see it. It's just where the tie-down ropes have abraded it and left a scuff behind. Now is when you want to get it off, and all it takes is just a little work with the 3000.
Okay, sometimes after you've washed the boat, there'll be a little bit of residue left on it, and all we do is just take some glass cleaner, doesn't matter what kind, Windex or whatever, and just kind of spray all the areas down that you're gonna coat. You got to have a perfectly clean surface before you apply the white paint, and that's what I'm doing with the glass cleaner, is just making sure that we're just nice and clean, no streaks. So when we do go to coat, we don't have any issues. What I'm gonna do now is, we have to get the boat completely dry before we can coat it. We can't have any water running off of any surface onto the coating, or else we'll pretty much mess it up. What we're going to do is, we have an electric blower. We want to use an electric one, because if you use a gas one, those two-stroke engines emit oil. And if you get oil, exhaust oil on the gel coat, the white new won't adhere to it correctly. So we have an electric powered one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow out every nook and cranny on this boat. It's going to take me a little while, but in the end it'll be definitely worth it. So here I go.
First thing you want to coat, we're going to literally start from the top of this boat. We're going to work with the braidwork first. Now you want to work, again, just like you're prepping the boat, really systematically. Don't try to, jump from one side to the other. Alright. Now you see, I'm kind of doing this in a linear fashion. You want to try to get continuous strokes if you can, because it's going to flow out better. So I'm starting at the back, and I'm working my way to the front, slight overlap. You can see my speed. I'm kind of moving a little slower so it has a chance to flow out and get absorbed. You don't want to go super, super fast. Your coating, when you get into the coating stage, when you're done applying, and here's another thing, is you apply a product to your rag, do it over another rag so you don't drip onto the boat, and sit your bottle down in the rag, because there could be product on the outside of the bottle. You want to sit it down and form a ring in a place that you're not ready to coat. Just little things like that help keep the job neat and make your life a little easier. Application, and we've gone through our prep and done a real thorough clean. This has got some mold and mildew stains that aren't going to come off. But if you've got a new boat, or you just want to protect yours and stop the aging process, just get a good clean on it. The stuff, just like on the cars, it works great as far as protecting the vinyl. And also, again, it renders it non-porous. So if somebody sits here and they've slathered on, a greasy sunscreen, it won't stain the vinyl, which typically, most of the stains that you encounter on this are from sweat and sunscreen and tanning oil. Good. You can see my stopping point is a corner. You want to break this up when you're doing a center console like this from corner to corner to corner. Don't overlap a corner. Try to cover too much at one time. And you can see I'm getting about 3 passes, and then I want to re-wet my rag. You don't want to let this rag dry out on you. Make sure that it's got plenty of product on it as you go down. These areas like this are going to get a pretty heavy UV load, so they're going to be thirsty. Again, I'm going around the grommets first, take my busy areas, and then make a full pass across the center. I can make a break right here where this rail is. Visually, it's a good breaking point. I'll come back and get the front of that box. This is what you use your brush for. You get into these really, really busy areas, just paint it in so you get a nice, even application. You want to see dry areas. And again, it's all about working angles. You want to, when you coat in an area, especially something particularly as busy as this, is you want to get down low and you want to look at it from a lot of different angles. Make sure that... Alright, we're out. Only thing we didn't do in here was the non-skid. At the customer's request, we didn't do the non-skid. You can. One thing about non-skid is if you're barefooted and it's wet, it's a slip hazard. If you wear deck shoes, it doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. But we always leave it up to the customer as to whether they want it done or not. So if you're doing it for a commercial reason, you might want to inquire with your customer, let them know the pros and cons of coating non-skid, and let them make the decision. That way you're not going to assume any liability for anything that might happen to someone if they get on here and fall. Aside from that, we're pretty much done. We're going to walk out here and fine tune the hole one last time and then coat that. It's the biggest flat surface on the boat. It's got to be the most perfect, so we've done all our prep. We've done all our sanding, and we're getting ready to coat. But before you coat, just when you think you're ready to coat, take one last walk around it. What we're doing is we're looking for any stray water. We're going to double check for any scuffs, any stains that might need a little bit more sanding. And then after you've walked around it, if you're working with another person, you think it's right, have them walk around it and double check it, and then coat. Because once you get going on this, you can't stop and correct something. It's too big and expansive, and it's got to be dead nuts perfect, so you can't stop halfway through. So, take your time, make sure you're completely satisfied with the condition of the hull before you start applying whitening. Again, you want your rag super saturated, almost to the point where it's going to drip. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to be Rick's overlap. He's going to start right at the top.
You want to make sure you always overlap, at least by a couple inches. Let's go there. How do you spell shine?